We think we have the story of Bengal figured out. But what if the history we've been told buries a much older, much more powerful truth? Well, today, we're going to peel back the layers of myth to find the real and, frankly, secret origin story of the Bengali people. It all kicks off with one of the most bizarre claims you'll find in any ancient text. An early Vedic scripture, the Aitareya Aranyaka, describes the people of Bengal, the Bangas, not as humans, but as birds. Yeah, you heard that right, birds. Created beings that were just destroyed. It's a shocking and, let's be honest, a deeply dehumanizing place to start a history. So this leaves us with a huge question. Were the ancient Bengalis really some kind of lesser, impure beings, like these texts suggest? Or, and this is a big or, was that label just a piece of ancient propaganda? A story designed to cover up the truth about a civilization so powerful it made the world's greatest conquerors literally turn back in fear. To find the real answer, we've got to dig way, way deeper than these texts, into a history that was almost completely lost to myth. So let's do it. Let's uncover the story of the real first peoples of Bengal. Okay, this timeline really puts things into perspective. Check this out. We've got archaeological proof of human settlement in Bengal going all the way back to 2500 BCE. That's at the exact same time as the famous Harappan civilization. Now get this, the Aryans, the very people who wrote those texts calling Bengalis birds, they don't even show up in northern India for another 1,000 years. This land was ancient long before their story ever began. So who were these original inhabitants? Well, it wasn't just one group. The Bengali people are this incredible fusion, a mix of some of the subcontinent's most ancient indigenous peoples, groups we now identify as Vidyad, Austric, Dravidian, and Mongoloid. This deep, ancient mixing created a totally unique population. And we're not talking about scattered tribes wandering the forest. No. These groups built sophisticated societies and really powerful kingdoms. The most legendary of them all was a kingdom known to the ancient Greeks as the Gangarididae. And let me tell you, their reputation stretched far and wide. 200,000. Just let that number sink in. According to Greek historians, that's how big the Gangaridae infantry was. 200,000 professional soldiers ready to defend their homeland. That's a massive army by any standard, ancient or modern. And then there's this number, 4,000. This is what truly struck terror into the hearts of their enemies. 4,000 war elephants. To Alexander the Great's battle-hardened troops who had never seen anything like it, this was the ancient world's version of a fleet of tanks. It was absolutely terrifying. So here's the bottom line. When Alexander the Great, who had conquered basically the entire known world from Greece to the Indus, stood at the edge of Bengal in 326 BCE, his own soldiers mutinied. They refused to go one step further. Why? Because they'd heard the stories of the Gangaridae's power, their endless infantry, and especially those elephants. The world's greatest conqueror was stopped dead in his tracks, not by defeat, but by the sheer terrifying reputation of Bengal's might. Which brings us right back to the central mystery, doesn't it? If Bengal was this powerful, why on earth were its people being called impure birds in someone else's holy books? Well, the answer lies in a story of resistance, a resistance that lasted for 1,000 years. You really see this clash of two totally different worlds here. On one side, you have the Aryan Vedic view, which painted Bengal as this unholy, impure land, a place so sinful that you had to perform a purification ritual if you even visited. But the actual historical reality? It shows us advanced cities, bustling international ports, and a rich, independent culture. The question isn't which story is true. The question is why one group worked so hard to demonize the other. To understand this, you have to know this term Aryavarta. It was what the Aryans called their own holy land. For centuries, they drew a very clear line in the sand, both ideologically and geographically. And Bengal? It was intentionally, explicitly placed outside that border. By their own definition, it was the land of the other. And they had a powerful myth to justify this. The story goes that the fire god Agni, who represents ritual purity, was moving eastward, purifying all the lands for sacrifice. But when he got to a river bordering Bengal, he just stopped. He refused to cross, declaring that the land beyond was unfit. This wasn't just some campfire story, it was a powerful piece of ideology that justified keeping Bengalis out, and maybe, eventually, conquering them.
So how long did Bengal hold out against this pressure? 1,000 years. For a full millennium after the Aryans began their expansion, Bengal resisted. It took that long for any outside military or cultural force to get any kind of real foothold. That is an almost unbelievable record of successful resistance.
Okay, so this long stalemate forced a change in strategy. If you can't conquer a people with swords and elephants for 1,000 years, you have to find another way. The new battlefield wasn't going to be fought with armies. It was going to be fought with ideas, with philosophy, religion, and social engineering. This huge transformation didn't just happen overnight. It was a slow, deliberate, four-step process. First, you have the military stalemate we talked about. Since that didn't work, step 2 was cultural infiltration. Brahmin priests and missionaries started entering Bengal not as conquerors, but as teachers. Step 3, their influence exploded when they got royal patronage from new dynasties, like the Guptas and later the Senas, who used Brahmanism to make their own rules seem legitimate. And the final step, the creation of a brand new, rigid social hierarchy, the caste system. And what you end up with is a society that's been completely flipped on its head. A new elite class, the Brahmins, who were largely brought in from outside, was created and placed at the very top of the social ladder. And the vast majority, the original people of the land, were systematically pushed down to the bottom. This whole new order was really cemented in place by dynasties like the Senas, who, by the way, were also outsiders from South India. They were the ones who truly institutionalized this structure, most famously by creating the rigid Kulin system, a super intricate hierarchy of caste purity that would go on to dominate Bengali society for centuries. So when you really look at what makes up Bengali identity, it's not just one thing. It's this complex layering. The foundation, the bedrock, is those deep, ancient indigenous roots. Piled on top of that is a legacy of fierce, 1,000-year resistance to being dominated. And then, the final layer is a complex cultural synthesis, where all these conflicting forces eventually merged, sometimes violently, sometimes peacefully, to create something totally new. And that really leaves us with one final crucial thought. This story isn't over. It's not just ancient history, it's written into the culture today. So the real question becomes, how does this secret history, this buried memory of indigenous strength, of defiant resistance, and of a complex, often forced fusion of cultures, how does all of that continue to echo in the identity, the art, and the spirit of Bengal right now? That, right there, is the story behind the story.